Hey everybody, Joe Joseph here for thedailysheeple.com, and this is your news shot. So to king5.com we go, and they're highlighting the nuclear facility at Hanford up in Washington State. Now, I've talked about this, about the environmental disaster that place is, and we haven't even scratched the surface yet as far as some of the potential dangers that exist. And some of the existing dangers that people have already been exposed to that they probably don't even know yet. And here's a story, a great example of just how bad things are at Hanford, where a worker's saying it was complete chaos. This worker also inhaled plutonium, tested positive for inhalation of this lethal nuclear isotope, which, of course, is a key ingredient to producing nuclear bombs and warheads. That's what Hanford was all about. It says, for the first time since an extremely dangerous demolition job at Hanford started losing a grip on its safety plan, a Hanford worker directly impacted by the failures has granted an interview. This is not something that they allow. As a matter of fact, I think that anybody that does any work at Hanford has to sign a non-disclosure agreement just to work there. I'm not 100% sure, but I can tell you that too many people are afraid to speak out, whether it's because of that or whether maybe they think they'll be offed, which isn't too out of the realm of possibility, I guess you could say, these days. But the worker says he's pissed, he's scared. This is a quote, like we all are, that sooner or later it's going to bite me and I'm going to end up with cancer. Now, for fear of retaliation, the worker does not want to be identified. But 8 months ago, on June 8th, this person was one of hundreds working on the demolition of Hanford's plutonium finishing plant. The workers were told to take cover as a precaution because monitors detected radioactive plutonium particles in the air. But the event ended up not being precautionary whatsoever. The contractor in charge of the demolition, CH2M Hill, had an enormous problem on its hands. The workers said it was a complete chaos and it was a mess. Indeed, radioactive particles had escaped and spread outside the demolition zone. Hundreds of workers were eventually tested. 31 of them got bad news. They had inhaled or ingested plutonium, which of course emits alpha radiation, the worst kind of radiation to get inside of your body. Quote, plutonium will go to the bones and sit there for a long, long time. This is said by Dr. Erica Liebelt, a toxicologist and executive director, as well as the medical director of Washington's Poison Center. She continued, she said, you're at risk of lung cancer, liver cancer, and bone cancer. That's where plutonium heads in the body. Now, this worker said after being told no one was hurt, he was angry. Rightfully so, right, folks? I mean, think about this. How pissed off would you be? How angry? How sad? The flood of emotions. I can't even imagine what this guy is feeling right now. Not because he's afraid to die or he's not afraid to die. None of that. No. But here you are, and this is something that I came to grips with as a civil servant and as an active duty military person. It was a rude awakening for me to find out that the government's not on my side. It was a rude awakening for me to know that according to the government, I was just an asset. I was just a number, you know? And this guy's feeling that pain now too. I don't think this guy's afraid to die, but I think he's hurt. I think he's in emotional turmoil because he was lied to by an organization, an entity that he blindly trusted, like most people do. You think that the government has your best interest at heart. You think that the government's looking out for you with agencies like the FDA and the CDC and all these other agencies out there that are supposed to do their due diligence to protect your rights. And what do? They crap all over it. They don't care about you. They care about themselves. They care about making sure that at the end of the day, they go home to their family and they live in relative comfort compared to all of the other Americans out there that are struggling horribly. You know, I said it before, I'll say it again. You cannot measure the well-being of a country by numbers on Wall Street. That never paints an accurate picture. And here in America, we are dealing with some very severe problems. Real problems. Not hysteria, like the opiate crisis they say we have that we don't, but real problems. This country is mired in a pain crisis. Emotional pain, physical pain, spiritual pain, it's all there. There's a deep, deep hole in America's soul that people are seeking to fill the void with whatever they can. And a lot of this, if not all of this, is being perpetrated by our own government. And it's really sad. You know, you can take a look and say, oh, no, it's corporate greed. It's corporate greed because our government allows it to happen because they're doing it hand in hand with the corporations. They're basically the bagmen. They get told by the special interests what the special interests need, and then they do what they have to do as good little henchmen and handmaidens that they are. So this should be no surprise, but I can understand the hurt because I was there, and I know how that feels. And I feel for this guy. I really do. But to make it worse, it's the fact that they lied to him about his health and his well-being to an extent. This guy needs to be paid damages for the rest of his life. There's no reason why this guy should have to work another day in his life because of what happened to him. It is unfreaking believable. I don't know how else to describe it. Now, this isn't the only site out there that these problems exist. We have Superfund sites all over America. I had the privilege of working at one for over a decade. And that Superfund site was riddled with PCBs. Again, something that causes cancer and everything else. I truly believe that the numbers were understated. I don't believe that we had any business working on that base. But we did. Why? Well, because if there was anything wrong, why the government would tell us, wouldn't they? Obviously, now we know that that's not the case. Now, if you don't know what a Superfund site is, a Superfund site is something that costs so much money that it actually requires government appropriation to clean it up. Now, in this case, this facility, this base, was sought after during a BRAC, right? So here's the BRAC. That's the reduction in bases that happens every so often. The Pentagon gets together and all these yahoos get together and they say, well, out of the 900 bases we have around the world, we need to close some because it's getting too expensive. And this base was on the chopping block because it was a old naval weapons station that was stopped being a naval weapons station in the 1970s and is basically being reutilized as a glorified office park, if you will. And so they were going to close it down. The problem was, at the time they wanted to close it down, which is right around late 90s, at the late 90s, it cost over $3 billion in cleanup costs to get the PCBs and the buried ordnance. During World War I and World War II, instead of disposing of the ordnance, they just buried it. So you have all this buried ordnance everywhere, too. So, $3.1 billion. Now, when the cities that wanted to turn this into a park, they were chomping at the bit. Oh, boy, this is lakefront. This is waterfront property. This is going to be great. And then they found out how much it was going to cost to clean up, and it was like record scratch. Whoa, no way. Hey. On second thought, And so it became the government's responsibility yet again. And so even today, you have hundreds of people that work on that base and probably have no idea of the health consequences. I have no idea of what I was subjected to because it's not articulated to you. You're just told, hey, we got it under control. Everything's fine. Just like this gentleman here. Now, it says the PFP is where, for decades, the Hanford workforce produced plutonium buttons, a key component of building nuclear warheads throughout the Cold War. The building left behind where the most lethal radioactive structures were on the entire 586 square mile Hanford reservation. Now, after the event in June, CH2M Hill increased safeguards and promised to do better. But 6 months later, I know you'll never believe it, folks, the job got out of control again, and more plutonium began escaping outside the demolition control zone. And instead of getting to the bottom of it right away, you know what? CH2M Hill waited 2 days to halt the job. And during that time, radioactive particles ended up on all kinds of items, including workers' boots and office trailers, jersey barriers, and tumbleweeds. And elevated airborne levels of plutonium were recorded at employee exits, right next to a public highway. Now, the response, of course, was awful. And this gentleman says, to me, waiting was unforgivable and inexcusable. That should never have happened, and this contractor ought to be on the hot seat. Ought to be on the hot seat? You ought to be in the electric seat. I mean, think about this. This is murder, because it's not like they didn't know that things were going on. They willfully ignored it and kept people working through it. What idiot, what monster would do such a thing? You're damn right somebody better pay for it, and pay for it big time. And I think Uncle Sam needs to foot the bill on this at a minimum. At a minimum. And this isn't the only site. Like I said, folks, these Superfund sites riddle the American landscape. Look it up. Start researching if you have a Superfund site in your area. And if you do, get answers, because it may be affecting your health. I'm Joe Joseph. This was thedailysheeple.com's News Shot. Feel free to comment below and visit our website at thedailysheeple.com. #WakeTheFlock Up. Have a great day.